our relationships have like a massive impact on our levels of happiness.
Yeah. Welcome to Peaceful Zen Talks, the podcast where we explore beautiful complexities of relationships. I'm your host, Sanana Sharma, each week, and today we have Sarah Boutros. She's going to provide us with a lot of tips on relationships to make our relationship healthy on a day-to-day basis. So let's dive right in. Sarah, would love for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you for the sweet introduction that you already gave. So yeah, I basically what I do is I help people create healthier relationships. And right now I'm in the process of creating a course, which is literally like a handbook of everything that I wish I had when I was growing up to help me navigate my relationships. Because yeah, this is something that I feel like nobody's taught about, but everyone needs to be about because our relationships are probably one of the most important aspects of our whole lives. Like this really applies to everyone, right?
What inspired you to start with this journey? Absolutely, relationships are very important, but I feel like there's always that one pivotal moment for everyone.
Yeah. I think for me, it's kind of been a progressive journey over the last 5 years. Um, I at some point realized that I was very bad at relationships and I had to become better at relationships because I was feeling like extremely lonely. I was really unfulfilled, and I just knew that something was up. So I kind of started going on this journey of working on myself and figuring out why it was that I felt this way. And through that journey, I really started learning a lot about like what we were talking about earlier is your relationship with yourself and how your relationship with yourself impacts all of the relationships that you have in your life. And I started working on myself and I became so interested in understanding myself and how I was contributing to all the situations in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got inspired to start helping other women as well to, improve their relationship with themselves, improve their confidence and all that stuff. And, in that process of working on myself and seeing the impact that that had on the relationships, I wanted to take it a step further and say, like instead of just working one-on-one with people, I wanted to start creating community and I wanted to start bringing people together and teaching them how to have more meaningful relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So I set up a community in Dubai with 2,000 women. And
Wow.
yeah, and the whole kind of basis of that community was how do we come together and start building more meaningful relationships? And how do we start guiding our conversations in a way where we're not, just brushing on the surface level and feeling really unfulfilled, where we're actually getting to know each other on a deeper level and having these fulfilling conversations like what me and you were talking about earlier. So that kind of happened. And as I was doing all this in-person stuff, I really wanted to expand what I was doing and take it, even on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
So I just recently relaunched my Instagram with the focus of focusing on helping people improve their relationships. So,
It's easy to talk about surface level things, but then going deeper and really talking about your true authentic self and who you are as a person and sharing your journey, it's pretty nerve-wracking at times, especially when you're not sure about the person in front of you.
mm,
It's really easy at times to obviously vent to your friends and share with your close people who have known you for a very long time.
mm.
So how would you guide people to be able to open up about their journey, especially if they are scared to be vulnerable?
Is this in the terms of like with strangers or just in general?
I would say just in general with certain,
General.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to guide people to get more comfortable with being vulnerable, it starts with yourself. So before you think about being vulnerable with other people, it's like, how can you start getting more comfortable with the vulnerability in yourself?
Mhm.
Because the whole reason why we struggle to be vulnerable with others is because we might see our own vulnerability as a weakness or as like something that we need to hide from other people.
Yeah.
And so that's the block. But when we learn how to be with our own vulnerability, and when we learn how to give ourselves compassion and, stop expecting ourselves to be this perfect person who's got everything figured out, then that fear starts to dissipate and we feel more comfortable about sharing those parts of ourselves that, maybe we don't have to say that we're going to love those parts of ourselves in order to be able to share them, but you start to cultivate a bit more of an acceptance. And I'd
Mhm.
say that's the biggest key thing. Yeah. So start learning on how to be more compassionate towards yourself, especially to those parts of yourself that you're afraid of.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And then being compassionate, I know that there's a lot of terminology at times that can be thrown around, and um, I think it's important to be compassionate with yourself, but again, it looks different for each person. Do you have any tips on how someone who doesn't know how to be compassionate with themselves, how can they start off?
Yeah, totally. So I think that this is probably the easiest way to do it because everyone on some level has somebody in their life that they really care about, whether it's a family member or a friend, or like imagine if your pet could talk. I know it's a bit ridiculous,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
just want to get into that kind of putting yourself outside of yourself and into the position of someone that you care about. So like, let's say if um your best friend was talking about the things that you feel very vulnerable about. So let's say, for example, your best friend's like, um, super hard on herself because she's not getting everything right, as an example. And, the way that you would respond to yourself if you weren't getting everything right is probably like, oh my God, you're an idiot. You like, I can't believe that you can't just do this simple thing. Whereas if your friend was saying that to you, you'd be like, hey, come on, like, that's not fair. Like, why don't you think about all of the good things that you have done? And why don't you use this as an opportunity to learn, etc. So, like, one of the things that I personally have used that has been really effective with my clients and myself is relating to yourself like you would relate to a best friend or someone
Mhm.
that you care
Yeah.
about. And I find that the most effective way to do it is through journaling, because when you kind of just brain dump all of these harsh thoughts that you're having about yourself, you're able to take a step back and then you can come to it and see it in front of you objectively, and
Yeah.
then start, okay, like how would I actually respond to somebody else? Because most of the time we would never ever speak to anyone else the same way we speak to ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's so true. I feel like that's something I definitely need to work on because when it comes to my friends, I'm like the biggest cheerleader. However, when it comes to myself at times, I'm like, come on, get it right.
We're our worst critics. Like we
Yeah.
have these crazy expectations of ourselves that we would never ever put on anyone else. And when you think about it, then it becomes really interesting. You're like, why do I expect myself? Like,
Yeah.
why do I expect so much of myself that I would find pretty unrealistic for someone else?
I think a lot of it has to do with comparison. I think it's because we consciously or subconsciously tend to compare ourselves, especially with, social media nowadays. It as much as you can work on yourself, you're still working on yourself. So there's still a part of us that I think wants to be better and better. And that's the whole, I guess, purpose of life because you want to improve. But then I think through improvement, we forget about being compassionate with ourselves and also recognizing and understanding how much growth um, that's taken place. So I think that's very important. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing your journey. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about, again, you're in a relationship and I had a podcast with your partner, Nathan. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how do you guys manage this busy schedule? I know that you mentioned earlier that he has something going on right after, and
Yeah.
throughout the day it could be super challenging at times. And again, finding time for your partner is also very important. So how do you guys navigate through those challenges?
100%. So I think one thing that we do that a lot of people might be like, what the hell? That's not very romantic. But we treat our relationship like a business. And
Interesting. I've never heard that one before, so I'm so curious, and I think the listeners are as well.
well, your relationship is like your business because if you neglect your business will fall apart and die. And it is exactly the same with your relationship. You have to show up for your relationship every day, the same way that you have to show up for your job every day, and you have to put in the work for it. So, we organize our schedules in a way where we put each other in each other's schedules. So we know that we're busy people and we will continue to be busy if we don't make our relationship a priority because it's so easy to just get task after task after task, like especially as two people that work, for themselves.
Yeah.
If you don't put the boundaries in your time between work and your relationship, it can get so easily blurred and things can get neglected. So the first thing is that we put each other in each other's calendars and we prioritize that time for each other. And we do weekly relationship check-ins.
Wow.
So yeah,
Tell us
so we
about
do.
that. Tell us about that a little bit. I would like to also add that to my schedule.
Honestly, it's a game changer. I recommend it for everyone. And if you have a partner that is willing to do this with you, like your relationship will become so much better.
Wow.
Um, so we do a weekly life dinner. And we don't just talk about our relationship, we talk about our personal goals, we talk about our finances, we talk about our health, and then we talk about our relationship. And what it basically is that we take the time to, appreciate the good things that have happened between us throughout the week, in the ways that we felt the most connected to each other. We ask about, was there any point where we felt like maybe we neglected each other a little bit? And what that does is that it allows you to see the blind spots from both sides and it creates the safe space to have those kind of conversations. And then you're like, okay, so what can we do, next week to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah.
And when you have those types of conversations, the relationship only improves because not only are you taking time to appreciate each other, but you're also taking time to work on the things that are, getting in the way. So we've got like a whole list of questions. That's just a couple of examples, but we might be here for like an hour if I list all the questions.
Of course. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just like, how can we start feeling more connected to each other? What are the areas that we can start improving in our relationship and, talk about any fears or anything like that. And it's been amazing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's such good, it's such a good thing to add to the schedule, especially if you're a busy couple and you don't have time to talk about these things as often as we would like at times. And
Mm.
especially being women, right? I mentioned it earlier. I think it's we like to really share our emotions and feelings, and men do too, but it just takes longer for men sometimes. So that's a great tip for everyone, especially if people are in a relationship to add that to their weekly, like a weekly check-in. Did you guys create these questions together? Did you find it online? How did you?
Yeah, so I actually found this life dinner method by a creator called Ben Muir.
Okay.
It's an actual method by somebody called like Brad something. And Ben Muir added his own spin to the questions. So we used the ones from Ben Muir for a while. You'll be able to find them on his Instagram. His Instagram name is just Ben Muir. So if you
Oh,
want
okay.
to, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I was just going to ask, how can I find these
yeah.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so we started using like his variation of the questions, but over time we found that we wanted to add our own spin on things. So what we actually did was we went on ChatGPT
Yeah, of course.
and
Who
we were
doesn't?
like, give us inspiration on, the sort of questions and give us like 100 examples. And what we did is we chose the ones that we felt like were most relevant to our relationship
Yeah.
and just kind of put it in and
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I think that's so much growth that takes place when it comes to two people being on the same page and being able to be vulnerable and talk about these deep things. As you mentioned, blind spots. We all have blind spots, and we can't read our partner's minds. I was going to post a reel later about that. There's no way we can read the other person's mind. We have to really, it's all baby steps. It's all learning and growing. And we've had our own journeys, and we're now coming together. So
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a bit about self-worth. Self-worth is very important in a relationship. Have you ever struggled with it? And if you did, how did you overcome it?
Yeah, self-worth has been a huge thing for me, and like full transparency, still a constant work in progress.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the way that I've managed to overcome it is through that work of self-compassion, relating to myself like I would relate to a friend,
Yeah.
and really getting comfortable with my vulnerability,
Hmm.
because I think that's where it stems from this feeling of not being enough. Like not having self-worth is like, I'm not enough, nothing that I'm doing is good enough. And it's like the compassion thing is really big, but it's also like our brains are also hardwired to seek out the negative. So we're always focusing on negative and we're always focusing on the room for improvement. So there's a piece in there as well around like how do you start training your mind to look at the positives? So creating like a daily checkpoint in your journal of what am I celebrating about myself today? Like, what's one step that I took towards something that I know is good for me?
Yeah.
Or, how did I show up in a really kind and loving way to someone? Doing stuff like that. And another thing that I did, which I also have done with a lot of other people that I've worked with, which has been really helpful, is like when you start to learn about what your values are and you commit to living a life that is aligned with your values, you start to gain more confidence in yourself as a person because you are showing up as the person that you say that you are, and you are committing to the things that you know that are important to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a
And
it's a whole bunch of things.
yeah, how did you uh work on your confidence level over the years?
So I think there's something that happens when you go on this personal transformation journey. You start to understand yourself more. You start putting in all that compassion. You start learning how to put the boundaries that you need to put. And I think it's like, for me personally, through those small actions that I have taken to get out of the place that I was in, that is where I found my confidence. It's not like one day I woke up and it was there. It was more like, acknowledging the fact that I wanted a better life for myself and I did the things that I needed to do to get me to that better life. And I continue. It's a continuous process. Like I don't think there's an end goal, and I wouldn't say that I'm always confident. Like in the beginning of this call, I was like,
Of course.
I still get nervous about things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's just really acknowledging those little steps that you're taking in
Yeah.
all areas of your life to increase your confidence. And when you are taking the steps that you need to improve your life, I think naturally you start to see your own value as well.
Yeah. Have you, I mean, everyone has challenging moments in their relationships. And we all come with baggage, right? So, what do you have any advice for couples who are just starting off their relationship?
Hmm. I mean, they're starting off their relationship and they're healing or they're not healing or
Yeah, I would say, I mean, they're in the process of healing.
um I would say that communication is the most important thing. Um and if you're both healing, then hopefully that there's a mutual understanding
Hmm.
that nobody in the relationship is perfect. So I think communicating about the things that come up,
Hmm.
um, and getting comfortable with that vulnerability
Hmm.
is what is going to help you connect on a deeper level. It's what's going to help you improve your relationship, and it's also what's going to help you heal. Like I'd done a lot of healing work by myself,
Mhm.
but when I entered this relationship, there was a whole other process of healing that also started happening. But I never would have given myself the chance to really break through any of that stuff if I didn't communicate about the things that were happening inside me. And I think like what's important in terms of the communication side of things is like learning to take responsibility for the things that are coming up for you. That is what's important. And like, and that looks like instead of saying, blaming someone because let's say you have trust issues and you have a tendency to, think that your partner is gonna cheat on you or they're gonna leave you. And like it's instead of pointing the blame at them or accusing them for doing things that they haven't done, you might say something like, hey, I'm having trust issues.
Yeah.
And when certain things like this happen, I get triggered and I start to worry that you're gonna leave me, as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's the big key difference. And I'd say that's probably one of the most important things. But
Yeah.
also, um, coming back to something that we were talking about earlier, you were saying you didn't realize like the importance of having girl time.
Mhm.
I think like not just girl time, but you time in general is so important because when we first enter a relationship, everything is really exciting and you just want to spend all of your time with that person. Like you're
Yeah.
really enjoying developing, you got all these like strong feelings and you're all giddy about it. And that's cool. But it's so easy to lose yourself and to also lose the spark and the chemistry in the relationship when you just fall into that habit of constantly spending your time with that person.
Yeah.
So like and you also kind of lose yourself a little bit. You kind of lose touch with all the things that used to make you feel happy and confident. And I think, it's a big, big thing to maintain that sense of your identity outside of the
Mhm.
relationship and,
Mhm.
your friendships and the people that are there for you. It actually makes your relationship stronger.
Yeah,
So,
and as you mentioned, communication is important as well because whenever, when I ended up getting into this relationship, and then I told my partner now, I was like, hey, I think we really need to, um, go back to the way we were, in the sense of like when we were single, what did we enjoy doing? And we need to really focus on those things as well, because if we can do those things together 100%, but if our partner doesn't want to do those things with us, then we need to put in that effort to, for me, for example, hiking. If he doesn't want to go hiking, I can go hiking with my friends, and I need to keep doing that because
yeah.
those are the things that I did prior, and those are the things that fulfilled me. And then I'm going to show up better, when it comes to him, and show up better in our relationship. So yeah, as you mentioned, identity. And you know what? I think we all go through that to a certain extent, because as you
100%.
mentioned, feeling excited in the beginning and spending a lot of time together. And then all of a sudden, when you have that stability and you have gained the trust, and you've already worked on your communication and all of those things, I think that's when you need to really understand and recognize that, okay, now I can take a little step back. I have this incredible person in my life, and vice versa. But now, what can I do to fill my cup and also have that stability within myself? And it's great if people start off the relationship that way, but I don't even know if it happens that way, because we're so excited initially in the beginning.
I mean, whether or not it happens is a conscious decision
Yeah.
by somebody
Yeah.
else. And say that the earlier that you can implement it, the
Better.
easier it's going to be for you not to lose yourself and the things that you love
Yeah.
deeper into it. But
Yeah.
like, don't get me wrong, there is going to be a compromise on how much you do those things in the initial stages.
Yeah.
And that's completely fine because you are building a new connection with someone.
Yeah.
And it does require that initial extra effort, extra time that you're,
Absolutely.
and that's not a problem. But I think the problem is when you just completely throw it out the window and
Yeah.
all you're focusing on is this new relationship.
Yeah,
That's
because the truth is that life is going to be very different, from being single to being in a relationship. I think
true.
that to me was like the biggest, like, I'm like, oh, this is great. But at the same time, I felt kind of like I had to report to my partner for everything. And I'm like, why can't I just live my life? I'm not doing anything wrong. And why can't I just be free and be the person that I was before? But I think it takes practice because it is a shift from being single and doing whatever you want. And you're just living for yourself then versus now you have another human being in your life. So now you have to really try your best to um, compromise. It is the thing. You have to be able to because you're two different people with whole like different stories.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it is really hard.
Yeah.
But because you have to transition from being single to then not being single. And then you have to transition from not being single to somehow still kind of like
Yeah.
going back to what you had when you were
Yeah.
single.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I can't fully be single, but at the same time, I'm saying like I still want to live my life that like I had to sit down and I had to think about it. Okay, this was my happiness when I was single. My happiness was still doing the things that I loved doing. I loved going to fancy dinners with friends. That I did all these things with my friends and just finding cute cafes and all those things that just really made me super happy. I'm like, okay, I had to share this with him as well. I'm like, look, all those things that I did with my friends, I want to do them with you, but at the same time, I also still want to be able to do them with my friends. So finding that balance to and finding time within your schedule as well, because obviously priorities are for like, your priority to a certain extent is your partner. Because you want to make sure that you're happy and they're happy. And obviously, after that, like friendships do matter as well, 100%, but you have to figure it, finding the time is hard. And as we progress in our lives, we get more and more busy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then I would say last but not the least, I know you gave so much advice, but one advice that you would give to your younger self and you wish you had known.
Hmm. Um, I think like the biggest thing for me, which kind of doesn't really blend into the rest of the conversation, but
Okay, it's okay.
I think it's been the biggest thing for me is like realizing that your needs are only too much for the wrong person. And I think that this has helped me not just in my romantic relationships, but in my friendships as well.
Hmm.
And I think I spent so much of my life feeling like, you know, what I wanted was too much. Like the intimacy that I wanted was too much, or the way that I wanted to be shown love was too much from my friends, from my partner. Um, because I kept surrounding myself with people that could not meet me where I was.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Yeah.
then I think, sorry?
I said, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think when I started understanding that my needs are only too much for the wrong person, all of my relationships changed because I stopped settling with people that couldn't meet my needs. Before I was like, my needs are too much. I need to change my needs so I can fit into this relationship.
Hmm.
And then I just ended up, that's why I was so lonely and unfulfilled and just felt like, I wasn't getting anything out of my relationships. They were just draining me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, showing up in a way where it's like, if you can't meet my needs, then this relationship is not for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a result, like everything's just been better.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, values are so important, right? Like, how do we even pinpoint our needs? First, we have to know our values and what we cherish about ourselves, so that person can meet us on the same wave.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we're so
100%.
hard on ourselves. We do think that, sometimes I've thought that way as well, where I'm like, oh, maybe I'm too much, asking for too much.
Mhm.
No, that's not true. I think it's what your values are and how you were raised and how you grew up. My parents being together and my dad always being very loving towards my mom. Anytime he's made a mistake, he's always apologized for it and he's, always very romantic. And that's the childhood I had and like that's what I have within me. So it's like I'm going to expect the same to a certain extent from my partner as well. And that's not my fault. That's just how I was raised. And uh, those are my values, then you realize
Mm.
those are like, my partner being romantic is one of the values that like I'm like, if
Yeah,
he's not, then it wouldn't work
work.
out.
Yeah, it's not gonna work. Like if
Yeah,
your way of receiving love is having somebody be romantic and you're with somebody who struggles to be intimate or to express their feelings, it's just not gonna work.
exactly. And again, maybe communication and because when two people love each other and they express their needs, you're going to want to show up. You're going to want to show up with the being the best version of yourself. And yes, again, it ultimately comes down to making yourself happy, but we do want to make our partners happy as well, right? So
True.
if
True.
we are happy, then we're going to make our partners happy as well.
Yeah. And our relationships have like a massive, massive impact on our levels of happiness.
Yeah.
I think there's a big thing where people are like, you should only rely on yourself to be happy. Now this is a new thing where you shouldn't depend on anyone else for your happiness. I don't think that that is true. Like we should not completely depend on other people for our happiness, but especially in a relationship, like there is a responsibility there from both sides as well.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're with each other most of the time and you're spending time together, there is going to be a responsibility and you feed off each other's energy. If your partner's
Yeah.
negative, then you're going to feel down as well because you love each other, you want to support one another, and you want to really, at the end of the day, we're all seeking happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So true.
Awesome. I'm so happy. Thank you so much for showing up. It was such a lovely conversation and learned so much.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, it's been lovely speaking to you. I feel like I've known you for ages.